Picture this for a second. 30 million tons. Just try to visualize that much physical mass.
Oh, wow. That is a staggering number.
Right. It is a literal mountain of refuse. I mean, an unfathomable amount of garbage generated in just one country in a single year.
Yeah, and we barely even register it.
Exactly. We buy things, we hold them in our hands for a few weeks, or maybe just a few minutes, really, and then we want them to vanish.
We put them in a bin, we roll that bin to the curb, a truck comes to empty it, and we just, confidently tell ourselves that we threw those things away.
But where exactly is away?
Well, away doesn't actually exist in the physical world. I mean, it is a psychological illusion we have collectively agreed to believe in.
That is so true.
That garbage is still sitting somewhere on this planet, taking up space, interacting with the environment. But because it is no longer in our immediate line of sight, our brains just categorize it as gone.
Which is absolutely wild when you stop and think about it. And that illusion is exactly what we are plunging into today. Welcome to the deep dive.
It is great to be here.
If you are listening to this right now, I want you to just take a breath. Imagine you are sinking into the absolute most comfortable couch you own. Let's say it is raining a little bit outside. You have a warm cup of coffee in your hands, and you are just sitting down with two good friends to explore a fascinating quirk of human behavior.
We are looking at one tiny, incredibly common concept that Americans use all day, every day.
Yeah.
The concept of creating distance. We use this spatial idea to talk about letting things go, avoiding our problems, and, dealing with the overwhelming clutter of modern life.
I do want to make one absolute promise to you, the listener, right out of the gate here. We are not here to memorize textbook rules.
Oh, definitely not.
We are not going to talk about verb tenses or sentence diagrams or anything that feels like sitting at a hard wooden desk under fluorescent lights.
Nobody wants that.
Exactly. You don't need a pen, and there is no test at the end. We're just going to look at the stories, the jokes, and the very real human emotions behind how we create distance.
Because language is fundamentally a coping mechanism. I mean, we use words to survive our daily routines.
Right.
When you understand the emotional need behind why someone is trying to push a problem over the horizon, the vocabulary they use stops being a list of rules and starts being like a window into their psychology.
I love that framing. So let's start with what might be the most universally recognizable feeling in our modern, hyper-connected world.
I think I know where you're going with this.
I am talking about that deep, heavy, undeniable urge to just escape, the feeling of burnout.
Oh, absolutely. Burnout is essentially your brain hitting a critical capacity limit.
Yeah.
You have answered too many emails, navigated too many complex social interactions, processed too much terrible news on your feed, and your nervous system is basically just sounding an alarm.
I always visualize it like looking down at your smartphone at like 4 in the afternoon and seeing that the battery icon has turned red and is stuck at exactly 1%.
Oh, that panic.
It is pure panic. The screen is dimming, the apps are suddenly crashing, nothing is loading right. And you know that if you stay in your current environment, the whole system is going to shut down in about 60 seconds.
Right.
You desperately need to get away from where you are, find a quiet corner, and plug into a wall to recharge.
I see the appeal of that analogy, but a smartphone is passive. It just dies.
That is true.
When a human being hits 1% battery, we don't just power down peacefully. We get irritable. We make terrible decisions.
You really do.
We lash out at the people we care about. That is why the urge to get away isn't just a luxury. I mean, it is a biological necessity for self-preservation and for the preservation of your relationships.
That is a very fair correction. We definitely become destructive when our battery is blinking red. But, it is not always about escaping a toxic or overwhelming situation, is it?
No, not always.
Sometimes creating distance is actually about seeking growth. I was reading a story recently about a father who basically forced his teenage son to move out of his comfortable suburban home, get an apartment in a different city, and earn his own money.
Wow, just pushed him right out.
Yeah. And the father genuinely believed that it was essential for his son's character development to get away from the family.
Well, that taps into a deeply rooted cultural narrative, especially in American society. The idea of the self-made individual.
Oh, absolutely.
As long as that son remains under the protective umbrella of his parents' home, he is insulated from the friction of the real world. And, friction is what causes growth.
Right. You can't really learn if it is always easy.
Exactly. You cannot build resilience if there is always someone there to catch you before you fall.
Is the bird being pushed out of the nest?
Precisely. The father isn't kicking him out of malice. He understands that getting away from a comfortable environment is the only mechanism for discovering who you actually are when nobody's looking over your shoulder.
It is the pursuit of autonomy.
Yes.
But let's rewind the clock a little bit. Before we are teenagers seeking autonomy, we are toddlers who just experience, like, raw, unfiltered emotion.
Oh, the toddler years.
Think about the classic childhood memory. You are 5 years old, you get frightened by a loud noise at the park, or maybe you are just throwing a massive tantrum because your mom said you couldn't have a piece of candy.
We have all been there.
What is the instinct? You run away. You literally use your little legs to put physical distance between yourself and your parent.
And a fascinating dynamic there is the immediate regret.
Yes.
The child runs down the driveway, but they stop at the sidewalk, they turn around, they need to see that their mother is chasing them, coaxing them to come back.
Because they don't actually want to be alone. They just want to exert control over the situation.
Right.
They want to prove that they have the agency to leave, but they desperately need the safety net to remain intact.
Which is a brilliant mirror for how we behave as adults. The literal physical act of sprinting down the street evolves into a complex psychological maneuver.
I totally see that.
When an adult feels overwhelmed, frightened by the weight of a mortgage, or, trapped in a stagnant career, they rarely put on sneakers and sprint away from their office building.
Though, I have definitely had Mondays where I considered it.
Oh, we all have.
Yeah.
But instead of physically running, we run away metaphorically.
Mm-hmm.
We avoid the difficult conversation with our partner. We ignore the escalating credit card bill. We numb ourselves with endless scrolling on social media.
Yeah, just checking out completely.
We're doing the exact same thing that 5-year-old is doing at the end of the driveway. We are putting distance between ourselves and the source of our anxiety, hoping someone or something will eventually step in and fix it for us.
It really is the exact same instinct, just dressed up in a suit and tie. There is actually a terrible classic joke that captures the absurdity of this.
Let's hear it.
You ask someone, what happened to the little boy who ran away with the circus? And the answer is, the police made him bring it back.
Oh, wow. That is a groan-inducing joke, but it plays on a very specific cultural trope.
It is. The ultimate romantic fantasy. Running away to join the circus is the epitome of abandoning a mundane, predictable life for something wild, colorful, and completely devoid of traditional responsibility.
Right, the dream of freedom.
You don't have to worry about a 401k or mowing the lawn. You just travel the world with acrobats and elephants.
The irony, of course, is that a circus is an incredibly rigid, exhausting business.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
The fantasy of running away is always fundamentally flawed because you carry your own psychological baggage with you. You might escape the boring office job, but you haven't escaped yourself.
Exactly.
Your insecurities, your fears, your habits, they pack themselves in your suitcase right alongside your clothes.
Wherever you go, there you are. So if completely abandoning our lives to join a traveling carnival isn't a viable solution for managing modern stress, we have to find a middle ground.
We do.
We have to figure out how to manage the chaos without completely blowing up our lives. And that brings us to the concept of boundaries.
Drawing lines in the sand. Deciding what is allowed into your immediate sphere and what must be held at a distance.
Let's talk about the strategic use of distance. Imagine there is a massive event happening in the downtown area of your city.
Okay.
Maybe it is a huge political rally or a championship parade, and the traffic is completely gridlocked. People are flooding the streets. Public transit is overwhelmed.
Sounds like a nightmare.
It is. You might look at the news, assess the chaos, and make a conscious decision to just keep away from the city until you know what is actually happening.
That is a calculation of risk and reward. You are observing a volatile environment and determining that the energy required to navigate it far outweighs any potential benefit of being there.
Right.
It is a protective measure. You establish a perimeter.
We do this on a micro level every single day. Think about cooking dinner. You have chopped vegetables on the counter, hot oil in a pan on the stove.
Yep, lots of hazards.
If you have a dog or a cat, your immediate instinct is to keep the animals away from the kitchen. You might put up a physical baby gate or just use a stern voice.
Because the kitchen in that moment is a zone of potential danger. The boundary isn't a punishment for the animal. It is a mechanism for maintaining order and safety in a specific environment.
I am with you on the physical boundaries. Traffic is bad, stay away. Stove is hot, keep the dog away. But I want to challenge how we apply this psychologically.
Oh, okay. Let's get into it.
Is keeping away from an emotional situation always a sign of a healthy, mature boundary? Let's say I have a friend who is going through a devastating breakup.
Right.
They are incredibly sad, they are crying constantly, they are needy. I might decide to keep away from them because their heavy emotional state is making me feel uncomfortable and draining my energy.
A very common reaction.
But am I setting a healthy boundary to protect my peace, or am I just being a terrible friend and avoiding something difficult?
That is the perpetual tightrope walk of modern therapy culture, isn't it?
It really is.
The language of boundaries is frequently hijacked to justify simple avoidance. A genuine boundary is established to protect your core stability so that you can continue to function healthily.
Right, like putting on your own oxygen mask first.
Exactly. If a workplace is actively toxic, keeping away is survival.
Right, you can't heal in the environment that made you sick.
But if you're keeping away from a grieving friend, simply because sitting with someone else's pain is awkward or inconvenient, you aren't setting a boundary.
What are you doing then?
You are engaging in emotional cowardice. You are reverting to that childhood instinct to run away from a loud noise. True emotional maturity requires the ability to tolerate discomfort without immediately needing to create distance.
That is a brilliant distinction. Are you protecting your peace, or are you just avoiding discomfort?
It is a vital question.
It is a question we probably all need to ask ourselves a little more often. Now, everything we have discussed so far has been voluntary.
Yes, all self-directed.
You choose to leave the city. You choose to put up the baby gate. You choose to ignore your friends' phone calls. The power remains in your hands. But life doesn't always afford us that luxury. Sometimes the distance is forced upon us.
The involuntary removal of things. This fundamentally shifts the dynamic from one of autonomy to one of submission.
Let's look at a pretty extreme, dark scenario to really illustrate this. Imagine someone being arrested. They are brought into a police station, bewildered and terrified.
A very high-stress environment.
Absolutely. The officers take their name, their address, and then they take away all of their personal possessions before sending them down to a holding cell.
The language there is deeply intentional. You do not surrender your possessions, they are taken from you.
It is a complete stripping of identity. Your wallet, your phone, your shoelaces, your watch.
Everything that connects you to the outside world.
Exactly. These objects anchor you to your daily life. They represent your connections, your resources, your schedule. When someone forcefully removes them, they aren't just holding onto your keys, they are completely dismantling your sense of agency. You are reduced to an incredibly vulnerable state.
And that vulnerability is precisely the point of the procedure. It is designed to establish absolute authority.
Yeah, that makes sense.
By taking those things away, the institution communicates that you are no longer the author of your own experience. The power dynamic is entirely asymmetrical.
It is heavy. We learn the mechanics of this forced removal incredibly early in life, long before we understand the complexities of the legal system. Think about how we are taught basic mathematics in elementary school.
The foundational concept of subtraction.
Exactly. We learned addition first, bringing things together, accumulating wealth, getting more toys. And then the teacher introduces subtraction. If you have 5 apples and I take away 2, how many are left?
Subtraction is introduced through a narrative of loss.
It is.
Yeah.
And there's a silly math joke that plays on this. If you have 5 pocket calculators and I take away 2, how many have you got left?
I love how dated that joke is. Pocket calculators.
Right. But the punchline doesn't even matter. The setup alone reinforces the mindset that someone else is entering your sphere and diminishing your resources. We are conditioned to view the act of things being taken as inherently negative. It means having less.
But does having less always have to be a negative experience? That is a great question.
What happens when we invert that dynamic? What happens when the reduction of your resources isn't forced upon you by an external authority, but is entirely self-directed?
Okay, this is where human psychology gets really fascinating. The voluntary surrender of valuable things. Let's imagine someone who suddenly inherits a massive amount of money from a distant relative.
A life-changing event.
Completely. Society, capitalism, every instinct we are taught tells us that this person should celebrate. They should hoard that wealth, invest it, buy a massive house, upgrade their lifestyle.
This is the expectation, yes.
But instead, they are consumed by a moral dilemma. They cannot decide whether to keep the money or just give it away.
It sounds counterintuitive to our survival instincts, doesn't it? To willingly part with resources that could guarantee your safety.
It really does.
But inherited wealth, in particular, often carries a profound psychological weight. It is unearned. It might be tied to family history, guilt, or complex emotional strengths.
It feels like wearing someone else's incredibly heavy, very expensive winter coat. Sure, it keeps you warm, but you can barely move your arms, and it smells like a stranger.
That is an apt comparison.
Yeah.
By choosing to give that wealth away, the individual is reclaiming their autonomy.
Well, yeah.
They are rejecting the narrative that they must be defined by this inheritance. They're saying, I choose the freedom of being unburdened over the security of this money.
It is not just money either. People do this with incredibly sentimental items. Someone deciding to give away a box of expensive family jewelry.
Well, that happens all the time.
These are items that represent lineage, memory, status. Taking those physical objects and handing them to someone else, permanently creating distance between yourself and your past, is a radical act of self-definition.
It is a declaration of independence from your own history. You are consciously deciding that your future will not be dictated by the artifacts of your past.
And we don't just do this with physical objects, we do it with our belief systems and our communities. We shed ideologies just as voluntarily as we shed old jewelry.
The societal and political manifestations of this are incredibly potent. Consider the history of political movements.
Let's do that. And to be completely clear for our listeners, we are going to look at some historical examples of political movements, but we are absolutely not taking a side on the politics themselves.
No, of course not.
We are solely fascinated by the human behavior of ideological separation.
Objectively speaking, the mechanics of these fractures follow a distinct pattern. You might have a massive unified organization like a Labor Party or a United Party.
Right.
Over time, friction builds. Values diverge. Eventually, a small group of senators or organizers realizes that they can no longer reform the system from the inside. They decide they must break away to form an entirely new entity, like a federal party or a nationalist faction.
The phrase itself, breaking away, is so evocative. It is not a gentle drift. It is not like two boats untying a rope and peacefully floating in opposite directions.
No, the word break implies tension, resistance, and ultimately a violent snapping of bonds.
Exactly. If you are part of a massive political machine, you are woven into its fabric. You have shared funding, shared voters, shared history. To leave that structure requires immense force.
It's a massive risk.
You have to endure the anger of your former allies, the anxiety of starting from scratch, the risk of total failure. You have to break the chain.
And you only exert that level of force if the pain of remaining in the current structure has become greater than the fear of the unknown.
That is so true.
Whether a person is breaking away from a political party, a restrictive religious community, or a deeply toxic family dynamic, the underlying drive is identical. It is the desperate need to align your external reality with your internal values.
It all comes back to autonomy. The teenage boy getting away to find himself, the wealthy heir giving away the money to shed the burden, the politicians breaking away to build something new. It is all about shaping our own environment.
Which naturally leads us to question how we manage the environment we have chosen to build. Once you have established your boundaries, once you have separated from the immediate stressors, you are left in your own space.
Yeah, your own little sanctuary.
But that space inevitably fills up again.
Oh, it always does. The clutter always creeps back in. Which brings us to the next phase of this journey, making space and the art of letting go. We are moving from the temporary boundaries to the permanent vanishing acts.
Right into it.
And this loops us right back to that staggering statistic I mentioned at the very beginning.
The 30 million tons of refuse in the UK.
Right. Let's really sit with the physical reality of throwing things away.
Wow.
Our modern society is engineered for incredible convenience, and that convenience relies entirely on our ability to discard things instantly.
Instant gratification, instant disposal.
You buy a coffee, you drink it in 10 minutes, you toss the paper cup in a bin. You order a package, it arrives in a cardboard box filled with plastic bubbles. You take the item out, and the box goes in the recycling.
We use the phrase throw away to mentally absolve ourselves of responsibility for the object's continued existence.
Yes, out of sight, out of mind.
The act of throwing something away is a physical manifestation of psychological compartmentalization. If the empty cup is on your desk, it is a problem. It is clutter. It requires your attention.
It is literally in your way.
By dropping it into a receptacle, you are terminating your relationship with that object. You are declaring that it is no longer part of your reality.
It is a way of maintaining sanity in a world that constantly throws stuff at us. We have to be able to curate our immediate surroundings. There is actually a joke that captures this perfectly.
Oh, another joke.
Just wait. A guy is walking down the street and he sees his neighbor violently smashing an alarm clock with a hammer and then tossing the pieces into a garbage can. He asks, Why on earth did you throw away a perfectly good alarm clock? And the neighbor replies, because it always went off when I was asleep.
I will refrain from analyzing the comedic value of that joke, but it does serve as a perfect, absurd illustration of the concept.
The logic is flawless. The clock was causing a disturbance in his environment. It was waking him up. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't try to reprogram it. He simply removed it from his universe.
It is the ultimate expression of control over one's immediate domain. If it bothers you, discard it. But what happens when the thing bothering you isn't a physical object? You cannot throw a concept into a dustbin.
No, you can't put an abstract idea in a garbage bag and wait for the truck to take it. And this is where we transition from the everyday act of decluttering to a much more profound structural attempt to change reality.
We shift from discarding to abolishing. The concept of doing away with something.
This is such a powerful distinction. Let's look at medical science. Humanity spends billions of dollars and decades of research hoping that new medicines will eventually do away with specific diseases.
A very noble pursuit.
We aren't trying to just manage polio or smallpox. We want to eradicate them entirely from the human experience.
When you seek to do away with a disease, you are attempting to alter the biological conditions of existence. You are declaring war on a system.
It is the same with societal structures. Imagine a massive political debate over a national identification system. Let's say a government forces everyone to carry a specific ID card, but then they realize that literally every citizen already has a passport that serves the exact same function.
A classic bureaucratic redundancy.
Exactly. The public starts demanding that the ID cards be done away with.
They aren't just asking to throw their individual cards in the trash.
Exactly. Throwing your card in the trash just means you lost your card. You would still be in the system. You would just be penalized for losing it.
Right. The system remains intact.
Demanding that the system be done away with means you want the laws rewritten. You want the databases erased. You want the entire bureaucratic structure dismantled so that the concept of the ID card ceases to exist.
It is the difference between sweeping the floor of a house and demolishing the entire building to its foundation.
That is exactly it. Sweeping is throwing away, bulldozing is doing away with. And you hear this in the most deeply philosophical arguments we have as a species. People argue endlessly that we cannot do away with violence by using more violence.
A profound paradox. The desire to eliminate conflict from the human condition is perhaps our most ambitious attempt at doing away with something.
Those are a tall order.
But violence isn't a plastic cup. It is deeply ingrained in human history and psychology. You cannot mandate it out of existence. And as the paradox suggests, attempting to forcibly abolish it often just perpetuates the cycle.
It requires a fundamental evolution in consciousness, not just a change in rules. But, listening to us talk about breaking bonds, forcefully removing things, demolishing systems, it all sounds so violent, so harsh.
It does, yes.
But the reality is that the most profound changes in our lives rarely happen with a dramatic explosion or a bulldozer.
Often the things we lose do not shatter. They just slowly dissolve.
They slip through our fingers. And this brings us to an incredibly beautiful, almost poetic aspect of how we experience distance and loss. We are talking about the gentle, inevitable process of things fading away.
It is the realization that impermanence doesn't always require an active participant.
Think about sitting on a porch in the late afternoon during autumn. The sun is shining, you feel this beautiful warmth on your face. You are reading a book, totally relaxed.
I can picture it.
And then slowly, imperceptibly at first, the quality of the light changes. The bright yellow turns into a softer orange. You feel a slight chill on your arms.
The transition of the seasons.
You aren't doing anything to push the sun away. Nobody is actively abolishing the heat. It just gradually becomes less intense until the warmth has completely faded away, leaving you in the cool twilight.
It is a transition defined by a lack of resistance. The change is governed entirely by the natural passage of time, the rotation of the earth. There is a peacefulness to it, even if there is a touch of melancholy.
Melancholy is the perfect word for it. Imagine standing on a city sidewalk watching a massive street procession go by. Maybe it is a cultural festival.
Lots of noise, lots of energy.
Right in front of you, it is an explosion of sensory input. The brass band is blaring, people are laughing, dancers are spinning. It is incredibly loud and vibrant. But then they turn a corner and begin to move further down the road.
The physical distance begins to increase, and the sensory experience dilutes.
You can still hear the heavy thud of the drums, but the laughter blends into a murmur. The bright colors become a blurry block in the distance, and then a few minutes later, the sound is just a whisper on the wind. And then Silence.
It just disappears.
The music hasn't been destroyed, the people haven't ceased to exist, but their presence in your world has just faded away.
It is a deeply nostalgic imagery. And that gentle, drawn-out fading process directly mirrors how society, particularly in the English language, attempts to handle the most incomprehensible kind of disappearance we face.
Human mortality. Death.
Exactly. Confronting the absolute finality of a human life ending is a staggering psychological blow. The word die is abrupt, it is sharp, it functions like a door slamming shut.
It feels clinical. It is a biological fact, but it doesn't capture the emotional reality of the loss.
Because of that harshness, human beings have developed linguistic cushions. We use euphemisms to soften the blow. We choose to say that someone passed away because it fundamentally alters the narrative of what just occurred.
It is so true. Think about the tragedy of an artist or an author who spends their entire life in obscurity, pouring their soul into their work, facing rejection after rejection.
That is a very common artist's tale.
And then, just months before their final great masterpiece is discovered and universally recognized, they pass away.
It is a heartbreaking scenario.
Or imagine the devastating wave of grief that hits a family when a woman passes away within 3 weeks of her sister and her mother. It is an unimaginable sequence of losses.
It's a true tragedy.
When you are sitting in a living room with a family, facing that level of absolute devastation, saying, "Your mother died," feels almost cruel. It feels like throwing a rock at a stained glass window.
It lacks empathy. The phrase "passed away" introduces the concept of a journey, a transition. It suggests movement from one state of being to another, much like the street procession moving down the road until it is out of sight.
You can't see them anymore, but they haven't just been abruptly deleted from the universe. They have just moved beyond the horizon of your perception.
It implies that the essence of the person gently dissolved into the fabric of time rather than hitting a brick wall. This linguistic choice isn't about denying reality. It is about providing psychological scaffolding for the survivors.
It is how we hold each other up. We create these phrases to protect our hearts when they are at their most vulnerable. It really highlights how language is a tool for empathy, not just a system for transferring data.
Absolutely. Though we must also acknowledge that we don't only use language to protect our vulnerabilities in a healthy, empathetic way.
Oh, here we go.
We also use it to deceive, to evade, and to manipulate our reality when we don't want to face the consequences of our actions.
Oh, human nature. We can be incredibly noble and we can be incredibly sneaky. This is where we dive into the shadow side of our behavior. We don't always face our problems with grace. Sometimes we just shove them in a closet and hope nobody notices. Let's talk about the art of hiding things.
Let's begin with the benign manifestation of this instinct, the act of putting things away.
This is the innocent side of the spectrum. Imagine it is Saturday afternoon. You have just returned from the supermarket with a massive, chaotic load of groceries.
Oh, I know that feeling well.
You have 6 heavy bags sitting on your kitchen island. Cereal boxes are leaning against vegetables. Frozen chicken is dripping condensation onto the counter. It is pure visual noise.
An intrusion of chaos into your domestic sanctuary.
Yes. So what do? You meticulously put the groceries away. You place the cans in the pantry, aligning the labels. You tuck the vegetables into the crisper drawer. You put the frozen items in the freezer.
Everything in its proper place.
You are actively taking these items out of your immediate visual field and concealing them behind closed doors.
But you aren't doing it out of shame. You are doing it to establish order.
Exactly. There is a deep, primal satisfaction in looking at a clean, empty kitchen counter. The chaos has been contained. It is the same instinct when a parent buys a stack of brightly wrapped presents weeks before a holiday.
They have to hide them from the kids.
They know that if the children see them, the anticipation will cause chaos. So the parent puts the presents away on a high shelf in the bedroom closet. It is protective concealment.
The intention is positive. You are managing your environment for future success. But the psychological mechanism of concealment becomes much darker when we shift from hiding physical objects to hiding aspects of ourselves.
The emotional side of hiding away. I read this sentence recently that just broke my heart. He looked at his drawings of the rocks and hid them away again.
That is a potent image of vulnerability colliding with insecurity.
You can feel the entire emotional arc in that one sentence. Imagine this guy. He spent hours sketching these rocks, getting charcoal dust all over his fingers, trying to capture the shadows perfectly.
He was probably very proud of them initially.
For a brief moment, he was.
He laid them out on the table and felt a sense of accomplishment. But then, the crushing wave of imposter syndrome hits.
The internal critic awakens.
He imagines someone walking into the room, looking at the sketches, and scoffing. He anticipates judgment. He thinks, these aren't good enough. I am not a real artist.
It is paralyzing.
So to protect himself from the pain of potential criticism, he takes this deeply personal piece of his soul and shoves it in a drawer. He hides it away.
It is preemptive self-protection. If nobody sees it, nobody can destroy it. But the tragedy is that by hiding it away, he is guaranteeing that it will never be appreciated or understood either.
We do this with our art, we do it with our true feelings, and sometimes we do it with our entire physical selves. Remember how we talked about burnout earlier? When the battery hits 1%?
Yes, the need to withdraw.
Sometimes that withdrawal isn't about going on a restorative vacation. It is about complete social collapse. We hide away in our apartments for a week.
The hermit phase.
We turn our phones on silent, close all the blinds, and ignore the doorbell. We are so overstimulated by the demands of the world that we refuse to be perceived by anyone. We essentially put ourselves in the pantry like a can of soup.
While occasionally necessary for acute recovery, chronic hiding is an abdication of life. It is avoidance taken to its extreme limit.
But hiding away in your apartment is usually just hurting yourself. The behavior gets infinitely more complicated and more toxic to the people around you when you stop trying to hide yourself and start trying to hide your mistakes.
Ah, the linguistic gymnastics of avoiding accountability.
My absolute favorite concept in this entire discussion, the art of explaining away.
It is a masterful, if flawed, human defense mechanism. You are confronted with undeniable evidence of a failure, and instead of accepting the reality, you construct an alternate narrative.
I always visualize this as a massive, disastrous coffee stain right in the middle of a beautiful white living room rug.
A stain that cannot be ignored.
Let's play this out. You made a terrible mistake. Let's say you are a manager at a company and you made a blunder that cost the department a massive amount of money. The financial loss is the coffee stain.
It is very visible.
It is right there. The accountant can see it, your boss can see it, your team can see it. You cannot physically throw it away. You cannot abolish it. It exists.
The evidence is concrete.
So instead of getting down on your hands and knees with a sponge and taking responsibility for cleaning up the mess, you decide to buy an incredibly ornate, expensive Persian rug and throw it right over the top of the stain.
I see where you're going with this, but a Persian rug physically hides the stain. Explaining something away doesn't actually hide the failure. It just attempts to recontextualize it.
That is exactly my point. You aren't fooling anyone. The stain is still underneath. You are just standing on top of this new rug, talking incredibly loudly, gesturing wildly, trying to distract everyone in the room from the smell of old coffee.
Misdirection.
You build this elaborate structure of excuses. Well, you have to understand, the macroeconomic market conditions were highly volatile last year, or the communication from the vendor was technically ambiguous, so my decision was actually the most logical choice given the data.
You are attempting to dilute your culpability by distributing the blame across a vast network of external factors.
Exactly. You're trying to convince everyone, and usually yourself, that the stain isn't actually a stain. It is just a misunderstood shadow caused by bad lighting.
And this behavior spans from corporate boardrooms to personal relationships. Imagine a courtroom cross-examination.
High stakes explaining.
Very high stakes. A lawyer is grilling a witness, presenting them with contradictory statements they made about a specific person. Let's call him Waddell.
Okay, Waddell.
The witness realizes they are caught in a lie. Instead of admitting perjury, they frantically attempt to explain away their previous interest in Waddell and a simple misunderstanding of dates or context.
It is desperation masking as logic.
Yeah.
You weave this intricate web of words, hoping that if you talk long enough and use enough jargon, the other person will eventually get exhausted and just drop the subject.
The irony is that the energy expended in attempting to explain away a mistake is often far greater than the energy you would have taken to simply apologize and rectify the error in the first place.
Because covering up the lie becomes a full-time job. You always have to remember where the rug is so you don't trip over it. But there is a level of evasion that is even more brazen than explaining something away. Explaining implies you at least recognize that society expects an excuse.
You feel the pressure of the norm.
Right, but then there are the people who don't even bother buying the Persian rug. They just spill the coffee, look you dead in the eye, and step right over it without a word. They manage to get away with it.
Escaping the consequences of one's actions entirely. This is a fascinating disruption of the social contract.
It really is.
Society operates on the assumption that actions have predictable reactions. If you break a rule, you face a penalty. When someone gets away with something, that fundamental law of societal physics is temporarily suspended.
It drives us crazy. Think about the stereotypical image of a weary judge sitting in a courtroom. Standing before him is a petty criminal, let's call him Mr. Philbean, who has been arrested for the 20th time for stealing bicycles.
That is a lot of bicycle.
The judge just rubs his temples, looks down, and sighs, "Mr. Philbean, don't you ever get away with anything."
It highlights the contrast. Mr. Philbean is a spectacularly unsuccessful criminal because he always faces the consequences. The justice system works exactly as designed on him.
But the reason the joke works is because we all know people who are the exact opposite of Mr. Philbean. We all know someone who seems coated in Teflon. Nothing sticks to them.
We encounter them in mundane social settings constantly.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine you are at a nice dinner party. Everyone is having a lovely time, sipping wine, chatting. And then there is Anne. Anne is that one acquaintance who always says the quiet part out loud. Out of nowhere, she drops a deeply offensive, incredibly rude remark about someone's career or appearance. The entire table goes dead silent.
The social equilibrium is shattered.
The natural instinct of most polite people in that scenario is to just look down at their plates, take a sip of water, and desperately try to change the subject to avoid conflict. If they do that, Anne gets away with it.
Exactly.
She learns that she can drop toxic bombs into social settings without paying any social price.
Her behavior is inadvertently reinforced by the silence of the group.
But then someone at the table decides they have had enough. They set down their fork, look directly at her, and say, "I am not going to allow you to get away with a remark like that. What exactly did you mean by it?"
That is a powerful moment of reasserting the social contract.
Yeah.
By refusing to let her get away with it, that person is yanking back the rug. They are pointing directly at the coffee stain and demanding that Anne acknowledge the mess she just made. It is the enforcement of accountability.
It is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. If we let everyone get away with everything, society just dissolves into chaos.
True, but let's take a step back from the dramatic dinner party confrontations in courtroom dramas.
Fair enough.
While human beings are absolutely capable of grand deceptions, hiding in closets, and dodging massive consequences, the reality is that the vast majority of our time on this earth is not spent in high-stakes evasion.
No, most of our time is decidedly less glamorous than that.
For most of us, life is defined by a persistent, continuous, often unremarkable effort. It is the steady rhythm of endurance.
The daily grind. And that brings us to our final stop on this journey through how we experience distance and effort. The concept of working away.
If you look closely at phrases like slave away, slog away, or toil away, they all orbit the central idea of sustained, grueling exertion.
Those words, slog, toil, slave, they don't exactly inspire joy, do they? They sound heavy. They sound like walking through knee-deep mud wearing lead boots.
They imply an effort that is devoid of immediate gratification. You aren't sprinting across a finish line to the cheers of a crowd.
You are just putting one foot in front of the other. Imagine a busy restaurant kitchen on a Friday night. The tickets are printing nonstop, the heat is unbearable, the pans are clattering.
A very intense environment.
The cooks aren't having philosophical debates about their culinary vision. They have just put their heads down and they are working away, hour after hour, just pushing through the mountain of tasks.
Or consider a construction crew repairing a highway in the middle of summer. They haven't stopped, they've been working away all day. The phrase captures the sheer volume of time consumed by the labor. It is relentless.
It is the definition of Tuesday. Just waking up, packing the lunch, doing the commute, answering the emails, doing the laundry, going to sleep, and doing it all again. Working away is the hum of the engine that keeps society running. But it doesn't always have to be drudgery, does it? There is a different flavor to this kind of continuous effort.
There is the labor of solitary creation.
Yes. Think about someone sitting alone in a quiet room, working away at writing a book.
The mechanics are similar. It is a long, arduous process, but the internal motivation is entirely different from the line cook or the highway worker.
It is the slow, often agonizing, but deeply fulfilling process of trying to build something massive out of thin air. You sit at a desk for months, maybe years. You type a paragraph, you delete the entire paragraph, you stare at the ceiling, you write a chapter.
It is a marathon, not a sprint.
It is like standing in front of a giant block of marble with a tiny chisel and a hammer. You are just chipping away, day after day, hoping that eventually a beautiful statue is going to emerge from the stone.
It requires an immense capacity for delayed gratification. When you are working away at a long-term creative project or a degree or building a business, you are investing your present energy into a future that is entirely uncertain. It is an act of faith.
It really is. You are sending your effort out into the void, hoping it eventually connects with something. Which actually reminds me of a very specific, almost forgotten flavor of sending things into the void.
Ah, the analog nostalgia.
Yes. Let's talk about the old school charm of writing away for something.
It is a phrase that has almost entirely lost its functional utility in the modern world, yet it perfectly captures a bygone era of patience.
Today, if you want something, the process is instantaneous and sterile. You open an app on your phone, you tap a picture of a sweater, your face is scanned to authorize the payment, and a drone or a delivery driver drops a plastic bag on your porch 12 hours later.
It is incredibly efficient.
There is zero friction and therefore zero anticipation.
But historically, acquiring a specialty item required a significant investment of time and deliberate action.
You had to write away to a company just to ask for their catalog. Imagine the tactile reality of that process. You see an advertisement in the back of a magazine. You find a piece of stationery. You pick up a pen and physically write out your request. You find an envelope, write the address, put a stamp on it, walk down the street, and drop it into a metal mailbox.
You are literally dispatching a piece of your intention across a physical geographic distance. You are sending it away.
And then you just wait. You might have had to cut out little cardboard tokens from cereal boxes and enclose them in the envelope to prove you bought the product.
Oh, the cereal box promotions.
It was a journey. You sent this message in a bottle out into the postal sea, trusting the system and hoping that 6 to 8 weeks later, a package would magically appear in your mailbox.
It fostered a relationship with time that we've largely abandoned. Writing away meant accepting that the world did not operate on your immediate schedule. It required a tolerance for distance and delay.
It made the arrival of the thing so much sweeter, didn't it? The anticipation was half the value of the object. It is a much slower, more deliberate pace of life.
And perhaps that deliberate, slower pace is exactly the right energy for us to adopt as we begin to reflect on the immense territory we have covered in this conversation.
I think you're absolutely right. We have traversed the entire landscape of human emotion today, and we haven't even left the comfort of this couch.
We began in a state of crisis, examining the acute pressure of modern life.
We looked at the frantic, blinking 1% battery of burnout and that desperate, primal urge to just get away and find a place to recharge. We examined the childish instinct to run away from our fears, contrasting it with the mature, strategic necessity of keeping away from toxic environments to protect our peace.
We explored the complex psychology of autonomy. We analyzed the profound vulnerability of having our agency taken away and contrasted it with the radical empowerment of voluntarily giving away our burdens. We discussed the violent, necessary force required to break away from ideologies and structures that no longer serve us.
From there, we moved into the art of curation and loss. We visualized the literal mountains of garbage we casually throw away, and we debated the philosophical ambition of trying to permanently do away with entrenched societal problems like disease or violence.
We also paused to appreciate the softer, inevitable transitions of reality. The melancholy beauty of the sun fading away, and the deep linguistic empathy we employ when we say a loved one has passed away, softening the harsh edges of mortality.
And of course, we had to confront our own flaws. We admitted to the innocent ways we put away our groceries and the tragic ways we hide away our true selves out of insecurity.
We all do it.
We laughed at the absurdity of throwing a Persian rug over a coffee stain as we try to explain away our massive blunders, and we acknowledged the frustration of watching people like Anne get away with breaking the social contract.
Culminating finally in the acknowledgement of the persistent, quiet dignity of the daily grind. The reality that most of human existence is simply working away, chipping at the marble, trusting the process.
It really is a complete 360-degree cycle of the human experience. And I hope, for you listening to this, it proves that the language you hear every day in coffee shops and on park benches isn't just a random collection of vocabulary words. It is a living, breathing reflection of how we cope, how we connect, and how we navigate the chaos of being alive.
It is the soundtrack of our survival.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to stay settled on that couch for just one more minute. I want to leave you with a gentle question to ponder as you finish your coffee and step back out into the momentum of your day.
Just something to carry with you.
Exactly. Exactly. I want you to take a hard, honest look at the main thing you are working away at right now in your life. Maybe it is your career, maybe it is a specific relationship, maybe it is a creative project that you've been chipping away at for years. Look at where you are pouring all of your continuous daily effort. Is that thing still truly bringing you joy and a sense of fulfillment? Or is it finally time to break away, leave it all behind, and start building something entirely new?
Phrasal verb practice block. In this practice section, listen actively or passively. You can simply listen and relax, or you can pause and repeat each sentence out loud. Try to imitate the pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Repeat the sentences several times to help the phrasal verbs become natural in your mind. After each phrasal verb section, there will be a 3-second pause. Use that time to repeat the expressions out loud and give yourself time to absorb them naturally. If you need more time, pause the video. The more you listen, the more automatic your English will become.
Get away. We use get away when we talk about leaving a place or escaping from stress, routine, or problems to relax. I really need to get away for the weekend. We should get away somewhere quiet. She got away from the city for a few days. Let's get away from all this stress. They usually get away during the summer. I just want to get away and relax. He got away after a long week at work. We're planning to get away next month. Sometimes you need to get away from social media. She got away to the mountains with her family.
Run away. We use run away when someone escapes physically or avoids a difficult situation or responsibility. He ran away from home when he was 16. I wanted to run away from all my problems. The dog ran away during the storm. She almost ran away from a situation. They ran away laughing after the prank. Don't run away from difficult conversations. He ran away without saying goodbye. I used to dream about running away and traveling. The little boy ran away from his parents in the store. She ran away to start a new life.
Keep away. We use keep away when we want to stay distant from something dangerous, unhealthy, or negative. Try to keep away from negative people. You should keep away from that area at night. I keep away from stressful situations whenever I can. They told us to keep away from the fire. Please keep away from the edge. She keeps away from office drama. He stayed home to keep away from getting sick. Keep away from toxic relationships. We try to keep away from processed food. The sign says, "Keep away from the animals."
Break away. We use break away when someone separates from a group, habit, routine, or situation to become independent or free. She decided to break away from the group. He broke away from his old habits. They wanted to break away and start something new. It's hard to break away from routine. She broke away from the conversation quietly. He finally broke away from a toxic relationship. The company broke away from its original brand. I'm trying to break away from my phone addiction. They broke away from the crowd after the concert. Sometimes you need to break away and think clearly.
Fade away. We use fade away when something slowly disappears, becomes weaker, or loses intensity over time. The music slowly faded away. My stress started to fade away after the vacation. The pain faded away over time. Their friendship slowly faded away. The sound faded away in the distance. Her memories began to fade away. The excitement faded away after a few days. His voice faded away during the call. The rain finally faded away by morning. Those feelings will eventually fade away.
Throw away. We use throw away when we discard, remove, or get rid of something we no longer want or need. I threw away a lot of old clothes yesterday. Don't throw away those papers yet. She threw away the leftovers after dinner. Why did you throw away my notes? We should throw away broken things we never use. He accidentally threw away the receipt. I'm trying to throw away unnecessary stuff. They threw away all the damaged food. She threw away her old phone last week. Please don't throw away that box.
Pass away. We use pass away as a softer and more respectful way to say that someone died. Her grandfather passed away last year. I was very sad when my uncle passed away. His dog passed away peacefully. She passed away surrounded by her family. My neighbor passed away unexpectedly. They talked about the actor who recently passed away. Her grandmother passed away in her sleep. He passed away after a long illness. The whole town was shocked when she passed away. We visited them after their father passed away.
Hide away. We use hide away when someone or something is hidden in a secret or safe place, often to avoid being seen. She hid away all the Christmas presents. I like to hide away and read when I'm stressed. He hid away the documents in a drawer. They hid away from the storm in a small cabin. She hid away her feelings for years. I just want to hide away from the world sometimes. He hid away the money under the bed. They hid away in the mountains for a week. The child hid away behind the couch. She hid away old photos in a box.
Put away. We use put away when we place something in its proper place or save something for later. Please put away your phone during dinner. She put away the dishes after lunch. I need to put away my clothes. He put away some money for the future. We should put away the groceries first. She put away her laptop and went to bed. Don't forget to put away your shoes. They put away all the decorations after the party. I'm trying to put away some savings every month. He quickly put away the paperwork before leaving.
Work away. We use work away when someone continues working steadily and continuously on something for a period of time. She worked away all night on the project. He's been working away at his desk since morning. They worked away quietly in the office. I spent the weekend working away on my presentation. She worked away while listening to music. We worked away for hours without a break. He worked away on his book every evening. They worked away despite being tired. I've been working away on my English lately. She worked away in silence all afternoon.
Get away with. We use get away with when someone does something wrong but avoids punishment or consequences. He got away with lying to his boss. She can't believe he got away with cheating. They got away with breaking the rules. I don't know how he got away with that mistake. She got away with being late again. He got away with copying the homework. They almost got away with the prank. You won't get away with treating people badly. Somehow she got away with it. He thought he could get away with everything.
Great job! If you made it this far, your English is improving. Keep listening, keep repeating. See you in the next video.